Hey everyone, I hope that you are doing well. We are going through 4th edition as though it was a new edition that was just released, and we are approaching it from the standpoint of maybe you're coming from a prior edition of the game, or maybe you're brand new to 4th edition and you're just curious if it's something that you would be interested in. So I've been making my way through the player's handbook, and through the course of this, I've been going into some details on the book in areas that I hadn't really looked at in either really ever, because it wasn't something that I generally used for my characters, or it was something that I just hadn't thought about in a while. So the what I wanted to do in this video was more just kind of talk about some of my biggest surprises that I had as I was going through this, because when I go back into it, you think you know all the different things. You've been, I've looked through this book so many times, and so you think you have a pretty good understanding of what's in this book. But as I really go through and look through each of it in the course of trying to put together these videos, I've looked at it with a different set of eyes, a different perspective, and a different level of detail than I had before. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I found most interesting, maybe the most surprising in doing that, and some of my favorite things that I've come across there. So I don't have a specific order that I'm going to go through, and I'll probably just jump around a little bit to some different parts of the book to talk about it. But let's jump in and have a look here. So the first part that was really interesting for me is the feats. And I had mentioned this when I was first going through the feats in that video, that I never really gave them their due. They're relatively complicated in the sense that if you look at this chart here, it's a lot to take in. If you're playing this game, especially if you're new to the game, and it says you got to go choose a feat or choose a couple feats, and this is what you're looking at, that can be intimidating. And for me, that was always kind of the case. There was just so many different options out there, and you got all these prerequisites you got to meet and stuff. And it was just, I just didn't have the patience to go through it. But in the course of going through to make the videos about this, I really spent some time looking at what these feats did and the value that they could bring to your character, and the fact that they're really adding nice little enhancements to what your character can do. It really made it interesting. It made me realize that I was kind of missing out by not spending the time that I could have in digging into all the different things that we had for these feats. So definitely something I was missing out there on. And then especially when you get to the multiclassing, that was a piece of this that I was never really much for multiclassing from like prior editions. So I played Pathfinder, which is really a variation of 3rd edition, and the way that you do multiclassing there is quite different. I really like the way that 4th edition does multiclassing. The way that you're choosing this feat, and you've got to have a prerequisite, but it allows you to multi-class into another area, and then you get access to some things for that class. And then as you level up, you can choose these power swap feats that further allow you to get even further into that other class. So you start out with something and you just kind of dip your toe into another class, but then if you want to choose these power swap feats, that allows you to go even further, and you can decide how far you want to go into those feats, which is really nice. I can't wait till we build some characters and try to do some multi-classing and use those feats. I think it was a really, really nice thing that I was surprised about, and I realized I was missing some stuff there. The next thing I was thinking about is channel divinity, and you get this for clerics, and you also get it for paladins, is these channel divinity powers. And I was always a little confused about how this worked, because most powers, it just has a name on it, but these channel divinity ones had a name and then like a subtitle, and that was always just a little confusing. I never really thought much about it, and they're each encounter powers. And I know some of these things that I'm saying that are surprising to me, other people I'm sure are like, what? How did you not realize that? I know, but it also, how much time did I really spend looking at it? And I didn't. But here I really was digging into these in great detail. And the thing here with how this works is that, so when you're a paladin, you get access to these channel divinity powers. You get divine metal, you get divine strength, and then if you're choosing your feats properly, then you can actually choose, depending on what deity you're worshiping. So if you are for like this one, prerequisite has to be You have to be a worshiper of Avandra, so which I should have guessed from the name of it. So it's another channel divinity power called Avandra's Rescue. So you're paladin, and you worship Avandra, and therefore you get access to channel divinity Avandra's Rescue. And then as a paladin, you also get channel divinity divine metal and channel divinity divine strength. So that's 3 channel divinity powers that you have. But the key thing with these is that the power is channel divinity. That's the power. It's not channel divinity divine metal. It's not channel divinity divine strength. It's not channel divinity of Andra's, whatever it was, retreat. It's channel divinity. And so that is the encounter power. And so and an encounter power can only be used once per encounter. And so as such, you can use one of those powers during the encounter. So if I use channel divinity divine metal, I've used my channel divinity encounter power. I cannot also use channel divinity divine strength in that same encounter. I cannot also use channel divinity of Andra's, whatever it was, in that same encounter, because I've already used channel divinity in that encounter, and that is the power. These are not each individual independent of each other. So that was something else I learned that I'm glad I spent a little bit of time as I was digging into this to better understand how that worked. And again, other people probably already know that, but it was something that was new to me, and I'm glad I better understand it. Another thing goes to the wizards, and how you one of the things I like about 4th edition is the fact that all of the classes are approachable. The mechanics are the same for all of them. For the most part, there's a few differences here and there. But for the most part, the mechanics are the same. So whether you want to play a rogue or a wizard or a cleric or paladin, mechanically, they're going to be very similar, and every one of them is approachable. That's the thing I keep going back to. What I like for the wizard is that you do have a little bit of variation because you get a spell book. And so you have a spell book that allows you to add more spells to it than you might otherwise. So like at first level, you're going to get, your at wills, your encounters, and your daily spells. Then when you level up, you get to choose more utility spells at 2nd level. And then at 5th level, you got more daily spells to choose from. So with the wizard, normally when you're leveling up, you would choose one. So like when you get to level 2, you get to choose one more utility power. And then at level 3, you get to choose one more encounter power. At level 5, you get one more daily power. But with the wizard, it's slightly different because you have a spell book. So at 1st level, you normally would only choose one daily power, but for the wizard, you get to choose 2 of them, and those go in your spell book. And then when you get to level 2, you get to choose 2 of your utility spells. And then at level 5, you get to choose 2 of the daily spells, and they go into your spell book. So you're adding more spells to your spell book than what you could actually cast in a given day. Because during the adventuring day, you have to choose. During a day, you're allowed to have, cast 1 daily spell at 1st level. Well, I have 2 in my spell book. I've chosen 2. Let's say I chose Acid Arrow and Flaming Sphere. Those are both in my spell book, but at the beginning of the day, I have to choose which one of those I'm going to prepare. And so I prepare Flaming Sphere, and then during the day, I could use Flaming Spear. But even though Acid Arrow is in my spell book, I can't actually cast it because I didn't prepare it for the day. And then as I add more spells to my spell book, I have more to choose from in that book than I could actually use during the day. And this is very much like what you have in prior editions of the game. You have a spell book, and there's more spells in there that you have access to than you can prepare on a given day. You have to choose which ones you want to prepare on that day. Very much goes back to even all the way back to really old school Dungeons and Dragons with how it controlled the number of spells that a wizard could have. So I really like that as an additional feature for how you play a wizard, because it makes it just a little bit different. The mechanics are mostly the same, but it adds just a little bit that gives that wizard a little something extra that they can work with, which is really nice. And along those same lines, I won't go too deeply into it, but that kind of goes back to rituals as well. So a wizard is a ritual caster, and I really like the way that rituals are used in this, where you have to get these ritual books, and there's rules about how you can copy them and how you cast them, and creating scrolls and using scrolls. But I think what I really like about the rituals is how you have to find them. we're so used to, if you've played 5th edition, if you're coming from 5th edition or 3rd edition, that when you level up, you automatically get access to more spells. Now you can choose 2 more spells that and we see that with the spells when, with the daily powers and utility powers, you just choose more. You level up, you choose 2 more. Level up, you choose 2 more. Rituals are different. Rituals are very, very even more old school in that you don't just get them. You get a couple at first level, but then as you level up, you don't automatically get more rituals. The only way to get more rituals is to find them or to buy them. And that to me is very much about, some of the old school D&D where it's about exploring. It's about looking for those rituals. When you're going, you find a library, an ancient arcane library, and you want to spend some time looking to see if there's any ritual books in there because you want to have some rituals. So I love that that's a part of 4th edition and is something that your wizard characters can do. And, and it's another thing of, just to, you talk about how 4th edition is nothing but combat and all this stuff. This is a whole chapter of this book that is really talking about something that these ritual caster characters can be doing during a campaign that has nothing to do with combat. I mean, rituals themselves are really just non-combat things, and just the fact of how you get the rituals and how you use the rituals and how you master the rituals. None of that stuff has anything to do with combat. This is all about characters and what your character wants and building those things into the game. So I really loved all of that as I was digging into it. It's really, really wonderful. Another thing is when we're looking at the equipment, and I won't talk too much about the specifics of the magic items because I have videos where I went through all this stuff, so I don't want to rehash the same things. But what I really liked in the magic items is better understanding how the daily powers worked. And how, you can't just, when you get a magic item, if I have 10 magic items and each of them has a daily power, I can't sit there and just start casting off all these daily powers one after the other, at 5th level or something. There are limits to the daily powers that you can use for your magic items. So that's a rule that I really think was interesting. It's a nice way to keep that under control so that you can have a lot of really cool magic items without getting so overpowered that the characters are just, they can do anything they want, and there's no challenges to them. So I like that rule. I'm not going to rehash it here, but if you're interested in that, check out the magic item video. I go into great detail on that. And hopefully I explained it clearly in there. So, but I really like that rule to help keep things under control. I was looking and I noticed there was a comment, and I looked at the essentials rules, and I feel like from reading the essentials rules that they maybe removed some of that rule from there, because it sounds like in the essentials rules it just says that at will magic items with an at will power can be used at will, encounter powers can be used once per encounter, and daily powers can be used once per day. That makes it sound like for essentials they essentially said that magic item daily powers, if you had 10 magic items that had daily powers, you could use each of those, but you could only use them each of them once per day. If someone knows something different, I haven't gotten to essentials, so I'm hesitant to skip ahead too far. We're still talking about the core player's handbook. I don't want to get too far into the other rules, but I am interested if somebody does know about how that worked in essentials, and if they did actually dial that rule back, I'd be interested to see that. And then the last thing that I had actually kind of goes back to rituals. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on rituals. I guess I just really, really loved the rituals thing, was with the components. And some of this goes back to the magic items as well. I like the fact that there's really depth to this rituals section of the book. In addition to the fact that you have to go and find the rituals or buy the rituals, and you have to master the rituals and all those things, and you can make ritual scrolls, the component cost is really interesting to me, because I know coming from like 3rd edition and 5th edition, there's different rules about the components that you need to cast the different spells. Here, it just has the component cost like 10 gold, and then you use the key skill to determine which of those components to need. So in this case, you need 10 gold worth of rare herbs. And the fact that if you had used the disenchant magic item to get some residuum, that residuum can be used for anything. And so I don't need 10 gold of rare. I either need 10 gold of rare herbs, or I need 10 gold of residuum, because it can be used as a substitute for any of these. And so to think about that, you can have these ritual casting characters who not only are on the hunt for rituals to add to their ritual book so that they can expand the things that they can do, but they're also on the hunt for these components so that they can then cast those rituals. And so as they're exploring and they're looking for treasure, you're not just looking for gold and gems and stuff. They're looking for some of these components that might show up in there, or they're looking for some magic items maybe that nobody has a use for. And so, okay, well then I'm going to go ahead and do the disenchant magic item so I can convert that into residuum. And now I've got some residuum that I can use to cast some of these rituals. It's just a layer of depth to the game that I think is really interesting. So I know a couple of my items that I had on this list were really about fell into the rituals category, but that in going through this, I think that probably was the section of the book that was most interesting to me. I probably spent the most time really reading through how these rituals work to understand it, because I just found it super interesting. So that's kind of where I'm at. Those were the areas that I think were that I jotted down as being things that were really interesting. Either something new that I learned that I wasn't really aware of, or just had glossed over and didn't spend much time in. And some things were just like, wow, I didn't know that this game had that much depth to it. And so it's just really great. So amongst all the other things, those were really good. Oh, there's actually one more. I'm just looking at my notes and I realized I skipped over one, and that is how different the classes are. Is that, for all the talk about it made all the classes the same, I think that in going through each of those classes, I have a very long video where I go through the different classes and talk about some of the nuances in the different classes. That is an area that is also just amazing to me when you really look at the classes and the things that they can do and the choices and the powers that they make. It's just, they're so different from each other. The mechanics are similar, but the choices that you have and the things that those characters can do is so different and unique, and you can make those characters your own. And the number of different choices you can make, whether it's feats or skills or powers, you can really make that character something special. It's not, when you play a human wizard, every human wizard is not going to be the same. You don't, at first level, these are the things you get. You just get these. And then when you get to second level, here's the things you get. And then at third level, here's the thing. No, every single moment opportunity, you get a choice to make in what that character is going to be. And so it's really hard to find two characters that are going to be the same, because people are going to make different choices. And there's so many different options available just in the player's handbook, not even counting things like the arcane power arcane power and martial power and all those other books that came along. And then you get into settings guides and things. So a lot of really great stuff. So sorry, I kind of forgot about that one, but I mean, those are just the things that are just, as I was going through this book, I just really noticed these things, and they just really drove home to me how wonderfully put together this game is. The mechanics are so good. The options that you have for your characters are so good. There's so much depth in all these different areas. I just loved everything about this. And, and no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this game is perfect. It's got no issues whatsoever. You can, and it's not even for everybody. Maybe you don't like this game. Maybe there's something about it, that's fine. But I feel like it's a really solid game. They really put their time into this and try to make things really, really well thought out. And I think if you go back and look at those Wizards Presents book and what their thought process was as they were building this, I think you can see that they really did accomplish a lot of the goals that they set out to do. And maybe I'll make a video specifically itemizing some of those if I can. But anyway, those are the things that I found that really jumped out at me as something I really enjoyed as I was looking through this book and how to put together a character and all the different options that you have. Some of these things were surprising. Some of these things were just educational for me. And all of them were just really interesting for me to dig into. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. What are some of your favorite parts from the player's handbook? What's some things that as you look through it, maybe as coming from an older version and you were seeing what was different from prior versions, what's some of your favorite parts that you liked? Love to hear those thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoy the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support me in other ways, you can check out my Ko-fi link down in the description. I'm super excited to continue this on and start building some characters with it. But definitely let me know your thoughts. Until next time, take care.